Before this story begins, I would like to clarify that I've been feeling sick during the following days, or more like these previous days. Therefore, if you notice anything particularly odd with my voice, I would like to apologize in advance. Also, if you are interested into more stories of this kind, the Reddit thread from which these stories were obtained will be provided in the description below. With that being said, let's begin. And also, I would like to clarify that the following stories were narrated with the explicit permission of the people that wrote them in that particular Reddit thread. Without any further ado, let's begin. To all Redditors out there, what is the most fucked up thing that you have ever done? Number 1. Surgical tech here. One of my patients was at the very tail end of a pregnancy, but the baby wound up dying. She was in denial, she refused care, and she carried the dead baby for almost a month. I was on the team to get her a C-section when she finally came to get it out. The baby's skin was like wet paper. Any pressure anywhere caused it to tear. The muscles underneath had started to rot. The bones were mostly broken down to the point of providing no structure. So, it moved like a body-shaped water balloon. The face looked like something from a horror movie. The smell was easily the worst I've ever experienced. The room was eerie silent, including the mother who was awake, and it is normal for C-sections. By the way, being a surgical tech for over 6 years, and that was by far the most fucked up thing I've ever seen or done. That case was almost 4 years ago and it still pops up into my mind regularly. By the way, I'm writing these lines in January of the year 2023. Number 2. Well, to be honest, if you ask me about the most fucked up thing I've ever seen or done, this would definitely take the cake. That would be picking up a dude's head that fell off his rotting corpse when I was working at the mortuary transport company. Also, picking up a 5-year-old kid who had a bookcase fall on him. Feeling all the broken bones moving in his tiny body fucked me up good. If we are talking behavior, I definitely attempted to ruin my friends' relationships in my teenage years cause I was bitter and lonely. A complete bitter and lonely asshole. Seeing them happy only made me feel worse, so I wanted to drag them down to my level. Luckily, the relationships were stronger than my bullshit in most cases. And yes, I've gotten a few messages asking questions about the mortuary job and whether or not these were the worst cases or the worst calls I've ever had. So I figured I'd post an old comment from a different thread. By the way, this is a trigger warning for suicide. I witnessed a woman pretty much break over the headless body of her son. I used to work for a mortuary livery service. I mostly picked up from retirement homes and from people's houses where they had a hospice nurse watching over them, but would occasionally get calls from the local coroner's office. One night, I was sent out to a call not far from where I lived. The place was surrounded by cops. They led me and my partner to the bathroom where a guy had blown his head off with a shotgun in the shower. Yes, it was a mess, as you can probably imagine, but by this point it wasn't super out of the ordinary for me. I had picked up suicides before, as well as overdoses, decomposing kids, so I was pretty numb to it by this point. We got the guy into a bag and loaded him up to the gurney, and we were out of the door at the worst possible time. The dude's mother was outside now, having been called by someone, I guess. She started hysterically screaming, which immediately put me on edge. I had dealt with crying and mourning loved ones every day. Even when I had to pick up the kid, his parents were already ushered into another room. But blood-curdling screams right in front of me? This was a first. A cop tried to grab her, but she managed to wriggle away from him, running up to the gurney and pretty much collapsing onto it, sobbing uncontrollably and babbling nonsense. It was the most raw and unfiltered emotion I had ever seen. She was clutching onto the gurney and like a rocking back and forth to the point that I had to grab the car before the whole thing toppled over onto the front lawn. I stood there for around 5 minutes, with a front row seat to unrivaled agony, with no way to really hide from it, before a cop had stepped in and tried to pull her away, saying that we had to take him. She eventually relented, and we got the body loaded into the car, and from there, it was business as usual. Totally business as usual. The reason why this one stuck with me so much is because, well, it was almost like looking into my own future. I was suicidal at the time, and a shotgun in the shower was exactly how I planned to do it. The only reason I was waiting was because I wanted to be in my own place, so my roommate didn't have to find me. The dude was even around my own age. It was a weird feeling of almost like standing over my own body, and when I saw the woman's breakdown, I could only see my own mom. It was at that moment that I decided that my mom would never scream and cry like that because of something I did. While the feelings are definitely still there, and I still think about death a lot, that night was when I decided that I would never do it, no matter how much it hurts. And what sucks is that it almost made the pain worse. Before, I knew I had an out, a way to make this miserable shit end, but after that I just felt trapped. I don't want to live, but now I can't die. Fuck. LOL. Number 3. I'm gonna rat my little sister out. During our parents' divorce and custody battle, we were forced to sit on a family counseling sessions. I was 12 and she was 8. We thought my mom was acting funny and might have been banging the counselor on the other side for her own personal testimonial interests, which is, by the way, still not confirmed. So we were pissed off because we loved our mom and our dad. It seemed like the counselor favored our mom over our dad, and it got rough sometimes watching him because outed by the only 2 adult forces who didn't love him in this world. Anyway, my little sister and I were left alone in his office, and she decided she was gonna take a shit in his little trash can to assert dominance. It was asserted. We never went back. Number 4. I'm a recovered heroin addict, 9 years sober, and I have a lot of stories of how much of a shit person I used to be. I really can't gauge what my worst moment would be, but I can post a story or 2 definitely. Also, before this story begins, I would like to clarify that I am a male man from the United States, specifically from Indiana, and I'm 39 years old as of the moment that I'm typing these words. Also, with that out of the way, let's continue. One day I was flat broke and on my last bag of dope. My neighborhood pharmacist just recently was arrested for a DUI. Brainstorming, I came up with an idea to try and get some pills at the ER. I still had med insurance at the moment, so I thought this was my best option. My buddy came by and we were hanging out outside smoking a cigarette and trying to figure out how to get hurt, just enough to get some pills, but not enough to actually have permanent repercussions. There was this big ass cinder block beside my garage, and I decided to drop it on my foot in hopes of just breaking a toe at most. I stood outside on the concrete patio for about 5 minutes with the cinder block, trying to hype myself enough to drop it on my foot. and I couldn't do it. I psyched myself out too much, and I told my friend that he would have to do it for me. And he said, okay. He held it about waist high and dropped it on my foot. I knew it wasn't enough damage, so I told him that he needed to put it up higher and drop it again, to which he did. So go to the hospital and tell them that I was carrying boxes downstairs to the basement and I dropped them when I slipped on the bottom step. So I go back, get x-rays, and I am in the waiting room. Doctor comes in and tells me that I've torn numerous ligaments in my foot, probably would hurt less if I had just broke my foot. Hearing this, I was excited, thinking, yes, I just scored. I didn't care about the pain at the moment. I was just happy that I had potentially scored. They released me and they handed me a script. They wrote me a script for ibuprofen. 800 milligrams. Defeat. Yes, ibuprofen. 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 So, to summarize this anecdote of mine, or TLDR, whatever you wanna call it, don't drop a brick on your foot trying to break it and get pills from the ER. It doesn't work.